What is going on, gunfighters? Saddle up for Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, the right way, with God at the center, biblical values, and real-world first-hand experience. Gonna forego the normal bio today, other than to say that first and foremost, I am a servant of God Almighty and a follower of Jesus Christ. I've been blessed to be a professional gunfighter most of my adult life. Military, law enforcement, private contracting, etc. Today, we're going to talk about guns that changed America. Made in America by Americans for Americans with rugged American masculinity, testosterone, and real grit. It should be upsetting, I think, when people speak negatively about American gun culture in a negative way. America is kind of founded on gun culture. This nation became a nation by men picking up arms, by forming militias, by American citizens being well-armed and well-regulated, meaning well-trained, to be able to fight for what will become their country, even before we were a nation. Before there was a U.S. Marine Corps, before there was a U.S. Army, there were well-armed American men who hacked their way in the wilderness, who made a life in a rugged and unforgiving country. I recently was doing a study on the initial Jamestown and their initial firearms. A large chunk of the first settlers of Jamestown died. The ones that made it firearms were very much a part of their lives. The Pilgrims that settled what will become New England came here for religious freedom, to worship God and follow the Bible literally. They likewise had their guns. The N.R.A., whatever it has become, I believe, was started as the first kind of human rights organization in this country to protect the right guaranteed for a well-regulated militia to not be infringed. Asked about the militia, it was said by one of the founding fathers, it is the whole of the people. And well-regulated, of the vernacular of the day, meant well-trained, not government oversight. And did you know, I believe that private battleships were used in the American Revolution? Private owned. Likewise, I do believe Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders had privately owned machine guns. We're a nation built on gun culture. Now, primarily, we're a nation built on and benefit from Judeo-Christian values. Even the very people today most hostile to Christianity are benefiting from a Judeo-Christian worldview. There is biblical basis in the Gospel of Luke. Let he who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. Likewise, it is written, if a man is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. This nation is a nation, I would submit, in large part, mostly because of its Judeo-Christian values, which made it the most prosperous nation in the world. And when it started to slip from that, so also did its position. But also because of its gun culture. So with that, let's talk about some guns that changed America. The first one, the Kentucky/Pennsylvania long rifle. These were used in the Revolution as well, and these were largely militia and private citizens that had not equal arms to the government and the military, but better. These were almost unarguably a better weapon from an individual standpoint than what the military on either side, either our military or the Redcoats had, right? It's a better gun. It absolutely played a part, the Kentucky and Pennsylvania long rifles. Now, much of this technology predated America and settling America. Harkening back to that study I mentioned, looking at the guns of Jamestown, there were many different European arms that came to Jamestown with different kinds of ignition sources. A lot of this technology came over, but it culminated in that Pennsylvania-Kentucky long rifle. Accuracy, reliability, precision, not seen in the military mass-produced arms of the time. Better than what the military had. It was used to great effect, the Pennsylvania and Kentucky long rifles. It helped found the communities that would become cultural hubs and pockets of this nation. Not just in the American Revolution, but for the average citizen, for the average pioneer that had to push west, that had a dream of getting land for his family, of hacking his own way in the wilderness with a Bible and a gun, maybe some apple seeds and some corn, hacking out some acres in the wilderness, building his own log cabin, defending himself and putting meat on the table. The gun was a part of life then. Absolutely a beautiful part of American gun culture. So that Pennsylvania, Kentucky long rifle, absolutely a firearm that helped shape America. Likewise, this next rifle, still a front stuffer, still a muzzle loader, predating the metallic cartridge. When Americans started to push west, there's just bigger game out here. Grizzly bears, buffalo, and the Hawkins rifle came into its own. You may hear them referred to as a trapper. But as beautiful and elegant as the Pennsylvania, Kentucky long rifle was, power and practicality kind of define the Hawkins rifle. They are great. I didn't put in the full-length bio this time, but I have competed in muzzleloading and competed with Hawkins rifles in the rendezvous and stuff, which I really enjoy. But in general, they're quite a bit bigger caliber than the Pennsylvania, Kentucky long rifles, designed for taking that big game, those buffalo, defending one from a grizzly bear. Back when long hunts and commercial hunts, back before there was synthetic fibers, animal hides, pelts, was how a man stayed warm and survived. And these groups of men going on these long hunts out west to discover, to map out, to pioneer, to provide meat and clothing. The Hawkins rifle came to kind of embody their main gun. And likewise, you may hear of a trapper handgun, a very similar kind of no-nonsense powerhouse of a muzzle-loading handgun. I think very much these guns also help shape America. Now, when we get into the American Civil War, that war really shaped, even echoes into today, kind of our culture. And states' rights and federalism and many things still echo today in America. Now, the main arm for both sides was really nothing revolutionary, but there was giant innovations happening on the side in the American Civil War. Repeating firepower maybe wasn't born out of the American Civil War, but mass-produced, reliable, repeatable, rugged, wartime capable firepower, I think, did come out of the American Civil War. Two giant steps here. Revolvers and something quintessential American, the lever action rifle. Now, the 1851 Navy obviously predates the Civil War, if you know your dates, but really was kind of a good proven design that was used. And repeatable firepower. When men were using ramrods to shove one ball at a time, and then later a Minier ball, an early crude bullet, down the front of a muzzleloader to shoot one at a time. You had repeating, revolving, handheld firepower. Things like the 1860 Colt Army and the L.A.P.D. And I'm not a sommelier, right? I'm not a Civil War buff. I do like the Civil War, but I don't know every in and out, and there were a lot of personally used weapons, but the revolver was absolutely used in wartime conditions and proved itself to be a valuable addition. Likewise, the lever-action rifle. Quite expensive and not mass adopted for like mainline infantry on either side, but absolutely was a force multiplier for the men that could afford it, for the men that had it. Going back to personally owned weapons in American gun culture, many of these men brought their own arms. There were better arms available to civilians, almost unarguably, than there was to the U.S. military or the Confederate military in this war between the states on either side. As a civilian, you could get better weapons, and they absolutely helped shape America. The old Henry, repeating firepower in the American Civil War. Absolutely what we would call in my time in the Marine Corps, in that common vernacular, a force multiplier. As a second witness, to give credit where credit is due, on private citizens buying their own weapons better than what they were generally issued. This is from Rock Island Auction Company. Henry rifles were acquired by individual soldiers, often veterans, using a portion of their re-enlistment bonus to obtain the expensive firearm. And with this Henry, not the first one I don't think, but an early, really successful metallic cartridge. And this might anger some people, but with a 15-round capacity. Yeah, this privately purchased rifle might have a high-capacity magazine, and we're talking about 1860, compared to what a lot of states would consider high capacity nowadays. Normal capacity, 15 rounds. Absolutely, I think, helped shape American gun culture. Firepower by citizens buying their own guns and having a giant advantage over the mass issue of the time. You're talking about going from a musket where you shoot it, then you have to bite off and tear the back of a paper cartridge, dump it down the front, take your ramrod, shove the bullet down the front, take the ramrod out, hopefully put it back in place, put a percussion cap, cock the hammer, and fire the weapon. I think a good rate of fire for that was 3 rounds a minute. To this Henry lever action with 15 rounds where you run the lever, pull the trigger, run the lever, pull the trigger 15 times. And it didn't just stop there with the American Civil War. Before and after the American Civil War, that was kind of a brief pause for a lot of people in going out west, that manifest destiny. But these repeating firearms absolutely would play a hand in America, both in the military and in civilians, and law enforcement organizations and individuals seeking that manifest destiny, seeking that go west young man. Like revolver use by, let's say, the Texas Rangers in their war against the Comanche, or the American settlers and pioneers with their lever action rifles. And there are many, many models, but a couple that really stand out. There are many more, but the Colt Single Action Army. That Colt Single Action Army it's so well made. There are still not just Colt, but many other companies still making them today The Colt Single Action Army, if you've ever handled one, shot one, they're just rugged and elegant and really meant as a working tool. They're plenty powerful, they're plenty rugged, they're a good design. That Colt Single Action Army definitely played a part in this country, in especially the settling of the West. And there were many of the revolvers, again, and lever actions that found their way to the West, likely many of the ones used in the Civil War. But one that stands out in the lever action world, like the Single Action Army does in the revolver world, the Winchester Model 1873, is still being made. It's so good. Powerful, repeatable. The amount of firepower that gave your average settler, your average cowboy, your average pioneer. Now, I don't want to paint everything as rosy. The next one I'm going to talk about absolutely shaped kind of America, I think, as we know it today, especially the West. And a little bit sad, but the buffalo rifle, the Sharps buffalo rifle, the almost extermination and extinction, not, but almost, of the American bison and the plains of the West. A lot of people think of this as the 4570 as a buffalo cartridge, but the 4570 came around right about the time they were outlawing buffalo hunting. But talking about like the Sharps rifle, the 1870s Sharps, and again, I'm not an aficionado of these. There's people that know all the different niches and what year and different calibers, like the 50-90 and all the different calibers, but let's just say the buffalo rifle of these professional buffalo hunters. Done for profit, done for hides, done for meat for the railroad workers, done to exterminate a food source for war against the Plains Indians. One of America's, if you count it as one, longest running wars with the Plains Indians. And again, it does sadden me a little bit. As somebody, one of the few people I think today that can say I've professionally hunted buffalo. I've been a professional big game hunter and guide, and part of that was guiding for buffalo hunts. Thankfully, we didn't drive those to extinction, and there are some pretty big privately owned ranches and things where you can still hunt buffalo. And I like that animal. It's a wonderful animal. A beautiful animal. I'm happy that we didn't drive it to extinction. But the way the West is now, especially the Great Plains, I don't think could or would exist the way that it does today, for better or worse, if they hadn't almost eliminated the bison. All the barbed wire, all the cattle. The fact that you have highway systems and railroads traversing the country. Probably couldn't have that if you had herds of buffalo that took days to pass. I would love to see them come back in the Great Plains, but that's where we grow a big chunk of not just ours, but food for the world is grown in America's breadbasket. I would like to see more bison, but again, that's where we grow a large chunk of our food. And for better or worse, Americans eat primarily a grain diet, wheat and corn, and you got to grow that somewhere. So, again, for better or worse, I think the buffalo rifle did shape the America that we know today. Well, we're already coming up, if I started doing the wrap-up of the show, to the 21-minute mark, and we haven't even gotten to the First World War yet. And I haven't even really gone in depth on these guns. This would be a really good series, I think. Perhaps I would like to go in more in depth on each one of these little genres. The guns that won the West. The guns of the early pioneers in the Cumberland Gap and Appalachia. Be pretty fascinating. I do very much enjoy history and gun history. Again, a big part of American history is American guns and gun culture. Perhaps I'll make this a two-parter. With that, tactical tip of the day. As I aforementioned, I have done quite a bit of competition shooting. If you've listened to other episodes and other bios, some of that was black powder competitions. little pro tip, a little tactical, ye old tactical tip from days of yore, black powder stuff. You're shooting black powder. A lot of the guys that do this and compete in it, I've seen add cream of wheat to their load, to their powder. Cream of wheat to their powder. And it's not to make it more nutritious downrange. It's said, and I think believed by people that know a lot more about black powder shooting than me, that it helps clean the gun as you shoot it. It helps reduce some of that fouling, the cream of wheat. I don't have any hard scientific data on that, but I've certainly used it. It certainly doesn't seem to hurt anything. I don't know when that came into common use, if, that was something done with the Pennsylvania, Kentucky long rifles, but certainly something you can do today. Cream of wheat in your black powder. Black powder, also a really cool and fun hobby if you like that kind of stuff. Also, they're not considered firearms, so you can usually order them and have them delivered right to your house. Also, if you like to build stuff, they make kits where you can build your own, let's say Hawkins rifle, to reach back into that American history and kind of hold a replica of history. Anyway, cream of wheat in your black powder. Tactical tip of the day. Now, a big part of what I like about guns, and I think why I have a lifelong, let's say, passion for guns, is that I used them as a young boy to help feed the family. I grew up a pretty poor boy in the South, and putting meat on the table was a way that I, as a young man, could contribute to nourishing the family. Now, I grew up a heathen, but later in life I found out there is a more important need for a man, a spiritual need, because we are primarily a spiritual being. The tactical verse of the day, John 6. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. There are things more important in life than guns, even than food, than bread, than meat. That spiritual nourishment. Because we are a spiritual being, and a stranger and a pilgrim on the earth. We exist because we were created by God, and we live by the grace of God. So I'm going to try something a little bit different here. This is part 1. Part 2 I'm going to put on Patreon. It's still going to be free. But hopefully if I can get more people over to Patreon, you'll check it out and see all the stuff in there that's hidden and see the value there. But part 2 of this I will put on Patreon. And I should mention, the people that were already patrons got this part 1 and part 2 commercial free quite a while ago. But there's a Patreon link in the show notes. If you want to listen to part 2, if you liked part 1, just scroll down, click the link to go to Patreon. You should see it posted there for free. No commercials. Thanks, and have a blessed day.